Thank you all so much for having us. Do keep eating that dessert.
Yes, it's
that
very
fabulous.
good.
Dr. Collins and I discovered that we have many things in common, including that we both really do like to eat. So,
especially you,
me.
Michel.
Especially me. True. How do you feel?
This is wonderful. This room is full of people who I've met at different phases of my life, who I have a different relationship to. If you look around, you can see the diversity of people in the room in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of sexuality, in terms of class, in terms of region. It's not an East Coast crowd or a West Coast crowd or a Chicago crowd or an academic crowd. It's all of that. And I think that lies at the center of my work, which is really conversations with many different kinds of people who apparently care about the same thing but may not be aware of each other. So for me, I've often thought if I gave a party and I threw a party and everybody I knew was in the room, what would that be like?
A wedding?
No, because you'd have the drunk uncle.
True that. Well, we might have that. We don't know.
We may have a drunk uncle here.
Happen, so wine
but
is
so
good.
far, we have not had the drunk
Okay.
uncle. And so it's really been fascinating to see people from different phases. I have a colleague who's here with his spouse from the UK, who I did not expect to see. Put your hand up, John. That kind of, there they are over there.
That's great.
You know, I mean, there are people from different phases of life. A lot of my graduate students are here when I was sort of finding my way, and they're just doing so well. I'm so happy for them, and they're all jumping up and down and excited, that kind of thing. I have wonderful colleagues who I've met along the way. And I also have friends. I've actually tried to have an actual life that isn't an academic life exclusively. So we have Cincinnati people. I have a Tai Chi friend here. Where are you, Randy? I've got, put your hand up, Randy. That's my Tai Chi teacher. She's here. I mean, kind of thing.
You know, we're kind of coming into a theme here. I'm actually going to speak on this. And so thank you all so much for being here. And also, we wanted to share that in the spirit of Dr. Collins's work, we will save a few minutes at the end if you would like to participate in our conversation. There will be a mic, a sort of floating mic around. We don't have very much time because we are keeping to a schedule, but it is very much fitting to your work that you would like to open the conversation up and bring others in. So if you have a thought or a question that you would like to ask at some point, please do make yourself known to this. I was noticing that I asked you how you felt, and you immediately turned the attention outward. And I found that very interesting. And one of the things I really like about this particular prize is that it honors the work that you have done throughout your career. But for some people, you are kind of an undiscovered hero, right? I mean, I've noticed that, many people have read your work without necessarily knowing that it was your work. I think that has been very clear. But it is also true that part of it is that one of the other reasons why this is such a remarkable accomplishment and honor is that you do not, as a rule, promote yourself. And one can see that by the fact that when I ask you how you are, you immediately turn the attention elsewhere. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, why not?
It's not about me, it's about ideas. That's the quick answer, and that's been the consistent answer. I'm not interested in being a media figure where I'm getting all the praise and the spotlight. I do not feed off of that. I actually find that distracting to thinking. Because so often what happens is you cannot have an in-depth conversation because you're performing for each other. What I would prefer is to have a conversation with people across differences, all kinds of differences. I find that very enriching. And that means I have to learn how to be a listener and not just a talker at people or to people.
How did you figure that out? How did you figure that out?
Because I had to learn to listen to know what to learn. You can't learn from someone if you're not listening to them. This is a culture where we just talk all the time so loudly at people, shout at people, showing pictures, promote ourselves. We're doing all of that. But to actually sit and listen and say, what did that actually mean? What did that person actually say? That's how I read. I mean, I read people from the past that way. That's how I have come to the works of great philosophy. I take time with people's ideas. You have to handle them carefully and then think about how they actually go together. And or what they're saying to each other. Sometimes they're conflictual, and sometimes they're consensual. But they don't know because they're not having those conversations. So I see myself as almost a translator, a teacher, a facilitator of the ideas. When I look at all the work that I've written, I think of it as teaching. And I think that's why people think the work is quite accessible. They almost think if something is easy, it's not easy. Accessible does not mean easy. It means you're actually engaging ideas that are very powerful, but that you might not have had access to because someone thought you're not worthy of that or you don't have the literacy or whatever.
What was the goal when you started out? We were talking earlier today, just let you in on a little sort of pre-production secret, that we met earlier today and had a wonderful lunch, and Dr. Collins, you pointed out that one could not have scripted the life that you had.
No,
No
and
one
not at
could
all.
have said, oh yeah, this girl from Philly is going to become kind of an internationally recognized scholar, and this and so. No one could have
Not gonna
sort of known that. But what was the goal when you started out? Do you remember?
I think the goal was I was outraged by injustice. And that just, you have to take that somewhere. You can turn that inside and you can sort of drink, or you can have an addiction, or you can be angry and deflect it on other people. You can blame institutions for your situation. It's not even my situation. I had empathy for the struggles of my parents whose aspirations were blocked. And I thought that was wrong because I thought they were good people. I had aspirations for the people in my neighborhood who were good people working very hard jobs, but knew that they were not going to get any further than they had actually gotten. So, and when you see then an act of injustice, I wasn't surprised by it, but I was shocked at a situation where some young boys they were sitting in the movie theater, they're black kids, they're sitting just making noise like regular kids. They had not snuck into the theater, they had actually paid way to get in there. And the usher, who was a young white man, a teenager, thought they had entered the theater illegally. And he threw them out. He opened the door to the side of the movie theater and threw them out. And a lot of us said that was wrong. We went to the back. Adults went back there, black adults, I went back. But basically, this guy was right no matter what. That's when I understood power really matters in terms of whose ideas are going to be listened to and whose are not going to be listened to. And I had to question my own schooling.
How old were you?
15.
Sounds like a very early memory.
15. 16,
and you remember
15,
it to this
16.
day?
To this day. Because
Because you're only 25 now, so it wasn't that.
I'm only 25, obviously.
ago,
I
so
mean, really, I've aged
wasn't that
extremely well.
But, yeah.
I'm doing that traveling from one universe to the other that my grandson Grant, who's right
Teleporting.
there, taught me all about with Spider-Man.
But
All right, there's
teleporting,
more
absolutely.
than one universe out here, all right?
But you had powerful memories, impressions early on of the way that power works.
Yes.
When do you think you realized that there was a language for that? Or what helped you to understand that there was a language for that and that you could even contribute to our understanding of that? Do you remember?
College. I was fortunate enough to go to a very good liberal arts college that said, we want to know what you think. And no one had ever asked me what I thought. In 12 years of public school education, no one cared what I thought. I had to just get through school to get that degree. But in college, it took them 2 years to convince me that they weren't just, wasn't a setup. I was very suspicious. But when I hit my stride by my junior year of college, and I was beginning to do my own work, really investigating the questions that I was interested in, which had to do with education, community issues, social justice issues, black empowerment issues, when I could do the work I wanted to do, even when people around me did not know much about that. But they supported me in the types of questions I was asking, which, by the way, turned out to be deeply philosophical questions, which I was not aware of at the time. That's when I hit my stride and I said, these ideas are a source of power, because they're powerful to me, and that must mean that they're powerful to other people.
How did you, as we've already heard, I mean, obviously many of you are familiar with Dr. Collins' work. That's one reason you're, and of course many of you are familiar with her impact on your own lives. But I really do want to go back to sort of the origin story. Did you have a eureka moment? I mean, as the previous discussants have said, you know, intersectionality now has become almost part of our, well, in some circles, I mean, let's just be clear, in some circles, it's just kind of part of our common language, even if it's used and batted around for purposes that some of us would not agree with. But do you remember having a eureka moment when you realized, because you are that eureka moment for so many people. Reading your work is that eureka moment for so many people. So I want to know, what was yours?
I guess mine was when I realized I was going to have to forge my own path. And there was no path scripted for me. I would have to write my own story and follow it and make my own mistakes and have my own victories. The article that was early mentioned, Learning from the Outsider Within, I realized that for me to stay in sociology, there was no way for me to fit in sociology the way it currently existed. What I had to do was I had to actually come up with a language that explained a place for me in the field, and if they threw me out and didn't want to publish the piece, which actually almost happened, by the way, that almost didn't get published, then so be it. I would go do something else, because I felt so strongly about issues of social justice and equity at the time. I still feel that way. That has not changed at all. That's what I was going to do. So I wouldn't call it a eureka moment. It was more a slow developing, self-analysis, self-reflective, self-critical, thinking about what I wanted to do and why, which I don't think happens overnight. And often people say that to kids, like, you're supposed to know you want to be a doctor when you're 14 and go do it. That's just not it. For me, it was embracing the life of the mind through a series of conversations with people, many of whom I were reading. They were not alive. Some of them were not alive. I knew how to read. That was crucial in order for me to access the ideas I needed to do what I wanted to do.
But I'm interested in the kind of origin story of the originality of your idea. Like, was it, what were you know how, when I was just describing this, I was talking to Denise earlier, and we were talking about both of us having read your work. Obviously, I'm a little older than she, so I read it first. But I remember we were talking about the fact that sort of the metaphor that I would use is kind of when you clean away the grime on the glass, and you can see through the window, and you think, oh, that's what I'm seeing.
That's it.
And so what I'm asking you is, do you recall, like, what was that moment for you as you were sort of building this concept of how all these sort of hierarchies intersect with each other? Do you recall how you developed that language? I'm always asking you to describe, how did you come up with Esperanto?
I'm not going to be, I can't be a good interviewee on this one, because this is me, the academic. It's almost like it was iterative. You get to each moment, and then it creates new opportunities to see new things. So, for example, I started thinking about race. Everything was going to be about race. Everybody thought it was going to be about race. But then race was a really unstable category. I wasn't just black. I was black, and I was working class, which people don't seem to understand as a really strong category in this country, because it had been erased. It still has been. But that, to me, made a difference when I went to college. And the girl down the hall from me had 7 sweaters on her bed, and her big issue was, well, which sweater shall I wear? And she wanted me to pick out one of her 7 sweaters that were all the same color. And I thought, I said, well, no, this is not why I went to college, that kind of thing. So, and then I realized class is important here, and race is important. Of course, everyone wanted to put me in the box of integrating the college, and that's going to make it good for all the kids because they met me, kind of thing. So the tokenism, I've never been a fan of that either. But here we've got race and class. Then we start adding in gender, which I actually came to late, even though I'm known as a gender scholar. I came to gender when I got pregnant. The source of the pregnancy, not the source, but the outcome of the pregnancy, we won't tell you about the source. The outcome of the pregnancy is the daughter sitting at the table. Could you raise your hand, please, daughter? All right, raise your hand, thank you. All right, I've produced the daughter, all right?
Yes. Well, you had help, but you had help, but
I had help.
That's my understanding of how it works.
That's how it works. Not always. We have to open our minds, Michelle.
True.
Open our minds. All right.
I'm familiar with that too.
But the issue was how people started treating me differently because I was pregnant. I was glowing, and I wasn't glowing on a particular day. They were writing this discourse of gender on me, and I thought this does not fit. So I was then unsettling the race and the class because of the journey toward gender. And I followed a similar pattern with discourses on each of these areas, racial theory, class theory, gender theory. Got on that path, and for me, intersectionality is a deepening of that particular intellectual journey. That, for me, was a personal journey, but I think it's also an intellectual journey for the culture, for the country, for the world. When you realize if you stop with one framework, it's going to be not enough. So,
I think one of the things that people are already realizing about you, excuse me, if they don't know this already, is that, there's this expression, those of you who kind of do certain kinds of work, somebody who can go from the suites to the streets. Y'all know that expression, right? that we were talking about this earlier, that there's a lot more sister girl than a lot of people might know, given all of your degrees and all that long sort of CD. And I was thinking, CV, sorry. And so here's what I was thinking about. One of the things that I read in one of your interviews, you said, all I know is that I was and remain compelled to do the kind of intellectual work that matters to people. I write both to people who are struggling for a pathway to a world that is bigger than the one that they have inherited. I also write to broader audiences on behalf of all those who have been denied an education. And I'm wondering why it is that has been so important to you, and how it is that you have been able to maintain that sensibility even as you have continued to kind of break through these walls. So the reason I ask is, I mean, a lot of us have had this experience. You kind of feel like if you're going to be the first or the one or the few, that you got to use all the big words so everybody knows that you know the words, or you feel you have to carry yourself in a certain way so that you will be understood to belong in those spaces. And the sense that I get from you is that you have always been yourself.
I'm not inauthentic in any of those spaces. I'm careful about how I present myself in spaces, but I don't go in and pretend to be somebody that I'm not. If it's not a space that I can make comfortable through dialogue, through conversation, through belonging in some way, I don't go back. It's not someplace I want to be. So I'm always where I want to be, except when I'm in faculty meetings when I really don't want to be there. I mean, there are places, not like I haven't been places I didn't want to be, but I had a really good reason for being there. I knew that that my fact of being there meant that 10 people who would not be there would benefit from my participation. I was willing to be there for them. It's always seeing yourself not only as just first in line because you're first, but knowing you're creating space for all the people who are coming behind you. That's how I was raised. So for me, the gift that was given to me by my parents and people in my community, and as I've learned more about African American history, as I've studied it and taught it, that's part of a much bigger struggle for freedom. And when you're part of a freedom struggle like that, you're really important, even if it's just you. Whatever you do every single day matters. You get up and do that. And pretty ordinary people do that on a regular basis in terms of caring for their children or you're just doing things that are ordinary. Because they did it, they made other things possible for me, and I make that possible for those who follow. That doesn't mean you get on my back and I carry you. That's not it at all. It means I'm creating a path to sort of, you can say, let's try this, let's try this. So that's the nature of it for me. It's a long arc struggle.
One of the other things that you said is that I don't adhere to strict divisions between knowledge and politics. For me, all knowledge is political in some sense because it's grounded in a social world that is characterized by inequality. But part of what that also means is that your words can be adopted, your words, your thoughts and ideas can be adopted to uses that you had not envisioned and do not approve of. And so I'd like to ask you how you think your work is being used in the current moment, and do you approve of it?
I think my work is really difficult to use in that way because I've been incredibly careful all the way through my work. You notice that I published so much stuff, and it's impeccably researched. It's impeccable. I said what I meant when I wrote things. I don't just talk out of my neck, as the expression goes. Right? So I want to say, if you're going to sort of give me a hard time about intersectionality, you need to read the 3 books that I read about intersectionality, that I wrote about intersectionality, and then we can have a conversation, and I'm perfectly happy to have that. And I'm perfectly happy to be wrong about things, because that's how you learn. But I'm not going to be the poster child for somebody's agenda or be turned into a slogan. I will not engage that particular dialogue. I'd rather go write something. But the earlier issue about what motivates me, that pisses me off. And I am like Audre Lorde that says you turn that energy, you turn anger into creativity. So the fact that I've been angry for 40 years, I've just been writing my little tushy off for 40 years. That's what I've done with it.
If you're just joining us, I just want to mention that we can include you in the conversation whenever you're ready, if you would like to sort of participate, because I think that you're certainly stimulating some thoughts here. Do you know how there's a saying, first they ignore you, then they make fun of you, then they fight you, and then you win. You've heard that, right?
I don't agree with it, but I've heard it, yes.
You heard it, yeah. You don't agree with it?
No.
Say more.
Because I think I'm happy to be ignored. The early part of my career, I was happy to be ignored because all those other things I didn't have to deal with. I could actually research, write, and do the work the way I felt it needed to be done if I was willing to forego the fame and fortune. Working in African American studies for 23 years meant that I was underpaid for 23 years. That's what it meant. All right, but I was willing to do that because to me that was paying the tuition of going to school to get the intellectual freedom that I needed to do the work. So I didn't mind being ignored. Now I do mind being ignored if somebody's held up above me as sort of knowing all these things and I know their work is shallow or I know they don't know what they're talking about. That does bother me. But what I think my strategy has done for me is allow me to establish my own foundation without distractions. So I can stand on my own foundation to continue to say what I want to say on my terms. So I haven't been on the path that other people have been on, but that doesn't mean I don't recognize it. And I also see the dangers of having one's work commodified and turned into a slogan, which is basically what is attempting to happen now. But I think that's going to be hard to do for me. I'm way ahead of them on this. I saw it coming. All right, and so basically that's why you have this huge body of information that other people are reading and citing. It isn't just me as the figurehead. You cut off the head and the whole thing dies. That's not going to happen. I could drop dead tomorrow. I'm not going to, people.
Yeah, no,
certainly the grandchildren. But the point is that I've left enough for people to pick up and take forward. And if they don't want to do that, I don't control that.
How did you see it coming?
How did I see it coming? Because I think we've always been really vulnerable. If you're saying something that is challenging power, if you're speaking truth to power, power is not like that. So you have to find a way to say that so you're still doing it without getting yourself killed, if that's what you really believe in. It's being really strategic and maneuvering and just being polite sometimes when that has to be, not mistaking politeness for, I'm part of respectability politics. I'm really not respectable, but I'm quite respectable in some ways, but not really. I'm a renegade. I'm an intellectual renegade. I've looked at myself that way, but I'm not going to walk around with a T-shirt that says intellectual renegade. I mean, why would you do that?
Well, we sell T-shirts. T-shirts are, they're okay.
Yeah.
They're okay. Yeah. But,
obviously, I like Michelle, even though we just met today.
I'm always printing T-shirts in my head. That's a good one. I'm always printing T-shirts in my head. That's a good one. No, I'm really fascinated by this. Why do you think there is this backlash at the moment to ideas that really only have just gained purchase in the wider conversation? Why do you think that is? What's your take on it?
Because they're working.
And do you all know what I'm talking about?
No, I know.
Do we need to spell it out? Are we all clear about?
Because ideas like the work that I do on black feminism, people coming after black women, intellectuals, or intersectionality, once they still don't quite know what that is, but they know it's bad, and it has something to do with critical race theory, which no one understands either. I've published in all of these areas. All right, so I know what I'm talking about. All right, because it's working. One has to expect backlash if you are being successful. So I look at it that way. All of a sudden, the recognition that, there's been a stealth movement here that we have not been paying attention to, where people are actually resonating with these ideas because they ring true to people's lives. They don't want to be separated from each other. You want language that's going to help you see who you are in an honest way and give you a way to think about yourself in an honest way, whether it's an individual or a group. So it's working, even though it's hard if you're at the front and people come after you, because you may be associated with those ideas. The ideas themselves travel. The book that's on the table, Lethal Intersections, Chapter 2 opens with the story of the case of Marielle Franco in Brazil, who was assassinated for her ideas, and she was very much intersectional analysis and anti-violence. This was a really dangerous thing for her to speak out about. And the thinking was, in assassinating her, you kill the messenger, you kill the ideas. That's the thinking here. We'll go after the idea, the person who's saying these horrible things and do away with them. But it doesn't work. Because in that case, 5 years later, I've just found out in the past 2 weeks, they have finally brought to justice or bringing to justice the people who ordered that assassination of her. Now, she's a black woman, a lesbian leader, and basically her ideas became more powerful because she was assassinated. That is a common situation. So the ideas actually outlive the people who create them, who write them. The ideas are really powerful. We have a whole world full of people who are still talking about Jesus. That was 2,000 years ago. Come on, that's some powerful stuff, right? So when I talk about the power of ideas, this is how I think about it. And to me, this is where I've decided early on I was going to put my time, whether I ended up on the stage with you or not, although I'm thrilled to be on the stage with you, and I truly am. But that's not why I did it. And that's not why I will continue to do it. And thank you for the prize, too, because that helps me continue.
We'd love to include you if anyone wishes to share, participate, ask a question. You're all, well, most of you are adults. There's two soon-to-be adults, but which is to say you don't have to ask a fake question just because you want to say something. So if there's anyone who wishes to offer a thought or ask a question or share an idea, we can keep going, clearly. Oh, okay, here and here. So, Mike, there's a mic running around. Thanks.
Thanks. So hi, I call Patricia Hill Collins Big Pat. This is my mother-in-law. And I just wanted to take a moment to tell you how much you have impacted me. So I'm far from scholarly, furthest thing from a researcher, don't consider myself an intellectual, but in the 16 years that I have been with my wife and have been able to see you, to witness your career, to get to know you, and to just engage in the discourse, I have to say that you have expanded the way in which I approach just everyday thinking in a way that nobody else has. And I say that to you all the time, and I don't think that you really realize it. Like,
But
you
say
really
more.
do.
Give an example.
Like, so, this is a ridiculous example, but we were in law school, and there was a guy who was dating a friend of mine, and I'm telling Big Pat about, we get in the club, and this guy, and he's acting up. And she says, well, what a interesting power dynamic. And I was like, power dynamic? We were just getting bottle service. Like, what do you... But, like, your whole approach to the world, your whole view of the world has really profoundly impacted the way in which I critically think. So I just wanted to take a moment to congratulate you, but also to thank you for how much I feel expanded having gotten to know you. So.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. And there's a question there at the table. Sorry, the lights are in. Do you see them?
They are bright.
Put your hand up again, please, so we can find you. I know it's like school. I didn't mean to. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
Hi, Pat. If I may call you Pat, I don't know you. I'm not part of your family, and I'm not going to. I want to congratulate the Berggruen Institute, but I'm not going to congratulate you. I'm going to thank you for the work that you've done. That's so inspirational, and you call yourself a renegade. And I think iconoclast and maverick might be other adjectives for you and your work. And I was just interested in knowing who inspired you during your life, whether it's in academia or arts or just in your life.
People seem to think that in order to do the kind of work that I do, you have to have a mentor who tells you what to do. And I've never had one. It's not a question. I've had many people help me, parallel mentoring. But for me, what's inspired me is the memory of my mother. My mother, each generation sort of laid a foundation recognizing that they would not be able to go where we're going. So what's fascinating to me is that my parents, both of my parents, my mother and my father, I had really good parents. But they were blocked, their opportunities were blocked. My mother wanted to be an English teacher. That's all she wanted to do, was read books and be an English teacher. And she could not do that. She ended up working for men. She ended up training men who were promoted and then were her boss. That kind of a situation throughout her whole life. And I think that harmed her. And for me, when I think about the why I do things, it's, she's like the benchmark for that. But it's not like I'm just doing it for her, because I realize that there's so many people like her, who are usually often black women. That's where I started. But as my scope has expanded, I realize that there are people all over the world who are like that, in different categories and religions and backgrounds. And I think that's why the work travels as well as it does, because it's when I first heard from people from Poland, I'm thinking, women in Poland are reading Black feminist thought? I mean, it was that kind of a moment for me, because what was in the work was really honest in terms of the recognition of their own lives. So what inspired me, what motivates me, is really the memory. I wish my mother could. She had no idea I would have done any of this She died much younger in her life, too early. So, I mean, it's really, what keeps me going is knowing that this is bigger than me. It's bigger than you. It's not all about me. It's not all about me, 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 me. That narcissism does not interest me one bit. It's really all about what you were given, what you do with it, what you're leaving behind. And what motivates me is really clearly the African American experience and the wrongness of that and the rightness of trying to continue to move forward. Sitting in the National Museum of African American History and Culture is a very powerful moment for me, receiving this particular prize. So that's how I would describe it.
I think we have time for one more because we do want to actually give you your prize.
That's true. We have to
you
time
can
for
be
the prize.
narcissistic today. It's fine. It's all about you today. Is there one more? Would anyone else like to participate? Where? Okay, over here. Just one. Oh, here we go. Just okay. Here you go.
Grant wants to say something.
Did you want to say something? Did you want to say something? Okay, let's hear it.
I think she really worked hard to achievement the award. So I think she really deserves it.
Well said. Thank you.
Grant is 7.
Well,
7.
Big Pat, before we let you go, I'm so glad that this is kind of where our conversation took the turn because I think somebody, I know, Big Pat, I love it.
I'm Big Pat.
T-shirt, Big Pat.
Only
that
she can call me that.
people, I think that so many people, when they think about people who think about issues like race and class and gender, experience it as like, eat your peas, take your medicine, it's gonna go down hard, but you gotta do it. And that is not your approach. One of the things that I think also comes through in your work is a sense of joy and optimism and hope. And I want to ask you about that.
Well, we just heard from why. Basically, because I know that as we sat here, all these babies were born since during this function, and they are coming into a world anew that they're going to build anew, and they're the ones behind us. So when I think about it that way, the COVID babies, there are a couple of people in the audience who had COVID babies, like, well, I don't know who Patricia is, but she had one. People who actually had babies during a period of time that was really a terrible time in terms of how the world was looking. So there is always this optimism, this hope, the refusal on my part to give you bad news and say, I've brought you into a world that's horrible, I can't do anything about it, it's full of racism and sexism, oh, you poor thing, shoot yourself. Why would I do that to somebody? I am part of the problem when that's how I'm beginning to see the world. So what I would tend to do is give people the honest medicine, the tools to think about those things that are really difficult, recognizing that they're going to inherit issues that, like we inherited issues when I look at my generation, and that the optimism comes from knowing no one has all the answers, and the people who probably will have the answers are those who are behind us, who are the young. And I'm very encouraged by what I'm hearing and seeing and the energy that is there.
Dr. Patricia Hill Collins, we are so proud of you. We thank you. And as our colleague here said, you so deserve this. Thank you so much.
Colleague.